Welcome to Camera Ready and Abel, the podcast that explores the intersection of media, change, and personal growth. I'm your host, Barna Abel, and my calling is to help you tap into your superpowers, clarify your message, and make an impact on the world. This episode is brought to you by the word security. Simply put, the freedom from fear, anxiety, or danger, which seems highly relevant to me in the media space. Security is emotional as well as physical, practical, and tactical, so I'm especially excited to have with me J. Michael Skiba to discuss the topic. Michael is also known as Dr. Fraud, and he is one of the world's leading experts in international financial crime and cybersecurity. He holds an MBA as well as a PhD in criminal justice and has worked on hundreds of cases around the globe, consults to major corporations, and is the author of Psychology of Fraud. And finally, Michael is the host of Dr. Fraud TV and can speak from experience what it takes to feel secure on camera. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. It is so great to be here, and I am so excited for your podcast. First off, congratulations on that.
Well,
excited to see the other episodes and spend some time talking about all things fraud, not fraud, the alter ego of Dr. Fraud and kind of how that came to be, and kind of express all those things and experiences with the listeners. So super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm super excited to have you. And I'm really thrilled to talk about the issue of security because it's on everyone's mind a little bit, probably every day. And right there, bold and beautiful on your homepage, it says, "Let me help you be safe." So here we are. And I want you to explain to me how you're going to help me be safe and by extension, anyone listening to the podcast. So to begin with, what does that mean to you?
Being safe, it's kind of, it's an emotional state as well, right? Because right now, we are just bombarded with technology. Scams are coming from all angles, right? You go shopping, you could get scammed. You could be doing business online and getting scammed. It's literally everywhere. And I think, that's where kind of the Dr. Fraud kind of came to be, is because I enjoy helping keep people safe. And I've seen so many businesses that have been threatened in many different ways. And I think it's so important to just take that emotion, and kind of help people, plug those gaps, if you will, find the vulnerabilities that they might not know, because small businesses they're so vulnerable. The studies show that they're being targeted more right now than any other segment. I think upwards of 424% just last year. So, it's just such a problem, but it's really an emotional state where, think about it, Barbara, we all have things to worry about with our businesses, right? So many things to focus on, creative content building. But, this is something that businesses shouldn't have to worry about. Don't take those calories away. We don't want to burn calories on fraud and scams and things like this.
Well, I want to clarify right there. So for anyone listening, if you're a solopreneur or an individual content creator or someone working in the gig economy and you have a website and a social media presence, I want to encourage you to consider yourself a small business because it's both a mindset and a practical consideration. So all of us doing that, can you clarify exactly what we're afraid of? Because there's this sort of nebulous sense that I could get hacked. Or we see that all the time. Sony got hacked. My son has a PlayStation. And I was like, what does that mean for us? What does it mean when someone has your information? If you're a small business and you get hacked, what am I actually supposed to be worried about? What does that mean?
And this is where small businesses are vulnerable because, we don't have, being a solo entrepreneur myself, if I have an IT issue, I go to another part of my office, tap myself on the shoulder and ask a question. It's just me, just like many of us out there. So, we don't have budgets, we don't have IT departments. And I think it can get so complex because as you stated, we see these big companies, getting penetrated. But small businesses, in my opinion, are more at risk for that simple reason because, we don't have IT security departments. We don't have budgets. So I think what's so important for small businesses, solo entrepreneurs, media, entertainment professionals is to, focus on the human element, what I call for prevention, and the technology element. And I think, right now, the biggest threat, in my opinion, that I'm seeing has to do with imposter scams. The FTC showed about, I think, $1.2 billion last year and imposter scams. Basically meaning someone pretending to be someone else trying to get into your business, period.
And what happens if they get into my business? Why are they there? Are they holding me for ransom, the ransomware side? Or are they stealing my private information so that they can be slowly siphoning money? I mean, what happens? What's the upside of targeting me?
Yes, and that's exactly what they're looking to do. So two things. They're looking, one, to either get money from you simply outright, right? That's the traditional method. But secondly, they're looking to get personal information for other purposes, for identity theft reasons, where they can get loans in your name. Now, thirdly, a really increasing threat that we are seeing is what we call data leakage. And I mean, this is really important for those in the entertainment, the media space, because, we have our own content, we have our own things that, is kind of proprietary to ourselves. And I mean, these entities, these scammers can be operating behind the scenes. We would not even know that they're there, and they're just grabbing information. They could be selling it on the market. They could be, doing many other dangerous things to it. But what's disturbing, Barbara, we know this, is that about half of the businesses, more than half, 62% of small businesses that get targeted go bankrupt within 5 years. So, you can take care of the threat up front, but it's those after effects, those things that are out there that we just, we don't see. And that's really what's dangerous. It's kind of like Jaws, right? We couldn't see the threat, and it was even more scary because it's like it was just lurking there waiting for us. Simple as that.
Well, let's get specific. So, one of the things in our conversations that you taught me is the understanding of having a threat assessment. What was that? What's the actual? Oh, my vulnerability assessment. How vulnerable or how much risk? So, how do I do that? Like, what does your average person do?
Yeah, and I mean, this is where you self-reflect, so you look at your business. And when I say business, again, as a media entertainment professional, part of your business could be the content that you're putting out. It could be, even auditions you're going on and information you're putting on those websites for your profile, so other groups contact you. So anything within what I call like the ecosystem of your business is where you could be vulnerable. So, on a large scale, corporate level, we look at everything from sales. Let's say it's an insurance company, right? Sales all the way down to a claim, right? But when we look at the small businesses, we have to look at that specific business. Where do you engage with other people? What do you do? Like, where I often start, Barbara, is how do you run your day? Think of a typical day and where you could be vulnerable. That's your ecosystem.
Here's a question. Looking at apps and certain things I've downloaded to help my business that were recommended by others. And then I was like, this is in a country that I don't know. You know what I mean? Like they're based in Montenegro or something, and it's an SEO company. I was like, I think I'm going to cancel this, but maybe they already have my information. So my one question is like, how do you know who to trust?
Mm-hmm. And this is what's interesting is because what we have to do is we have to focus on, right, because we see opportunities coming up and it's kind of like, Superman has the kryptonite, I call it. So every single business, every industry has a weakness, right? And to us, it might be, like you mentioned, getting new media pitches, getting an audition or something, that could be a kryptonite. So this is where the imposters really, really key in on a business, right? I'll give you a perfect example. So I have a trademark on Dr. Fraud, right? Because I realized I started operating in the media space. I said, wow, I need to really protect this brand. And a lot of us, working in that space need to protect what they have, right? So contacting an attorney went through the whole 9 yards, right? 2 days later, I'm at my P.O. box and I get a letter. It was a beautiful letter from the United States Patent Office saying that I needed to pay $1,200 and I needed to wire the money, et cetera, et cetera. Barbara, this looked so official. Dr. Fraud almost got duped by this, okay? And that can't happen because that'll probably make front headlines, right? Dr. Fraud gets scammed. But this was a scam. So what I recommend is what I call the human prevention, a hop out. That's when I get something like that, I hop out. I stop my emotions because immediately I'm thinking, oh my God, got to protect my brand. Someone's going to hop on it. Someone's going to get a media gig tomorrow with Dr. Fraud and I'm done, right? My whole brand is a wash. I have to think of something else. But what I did was I hopped out, thought for a minute, does this make sense? 2 days later, Called my attorney, right? Sent it to him. He looked at it. He said, absolutely not. It's fake. I've received 4 more since then in the 2 weeks following. So that was the kryptonite for me. Scammers know that. So for you, it could be, maybe business development or something. It could be, where they might try to, imposter you, and pretend that they're with another media company or a big network outlet or something like that. That's your kryptonite. So finding that kryptonite is key for a business. But really, you start your day. Like, how do you go through your day? What do you do, and where could that vulnerability be?
So if I'm hearing you too, it's stop, check in with yourself. So if you feel triggered, but it's also getting the habit of asking questions, right? Regardless if it looks official, if anybody's asking for money,
Correct.
contact them and ask, are you really asking me for money? Okay.
Right.
Step 1.
And another step, there are clues when we look at almost every single scam. We've done studies on this. Every scam from corporate level down to small business level, what we know, they have the same fraud DNA. Okay. So it's the same psychological power of persuasion that existed way back in the first scams on record, the 1800s, 1700s, medieval days, whatever they were. Right. But that's what they have they have the sense of urgency, the social pressure, all those things and it's evident in that letter that I mentioned. It tried to key in on me. And Barbara, you know what happens. I mean, immediately you're not objective. You're being subjective. Your emotions are making your decision. You're operating on 10% of your cognitive level, and you're going to make a bad decision, right? I'm going to pay the money. I want this off my chest. They prey into your fear. So this is what, again, consumers, small businesses really need to key in on is leave the emotion at the door, think objectively, take a deep breath. Nothing's urgent. There's no countdown clock. It's not like QVC where you have to act now and respond within a certain period of time. Take a deep breath and just assess the situation objectively.
So what can everybody do to minimize the risk?
This is what I recommend for fraud prevention at every level. I call it a 2-pronged approach, right? It's the human aspect of it and the tech aspect of it, right? And bringing those two things together will absolutely send the fraudsters elsewhere. And that's really the key, Barbara. This is what we want to do. We want to send them somewhere else. It's kind of like, I dabbled in muscle cars, always have, love them. So one of the things, if you remember, do you remember the club? The thing you'd put on the steering wheel where you like lock it, it was like this long unit. Do you remember this? The club.
Yes, and they arrived on a Wednesday and left on Thursday. It's like, whatever happened to the club?
Correct. But they thwarted efforts during that time because all they did, really, the designer of the product realized, you know what? It really can't prevent a theft. It was all psychological. What it did was, a potential auto thief would walk by in the window. He'd say, oh, I do have a hacksaw, but do I really want to spend 10 minutes on this? Let me look at the next car. What is the next car doesn't have a club. Hey, guess what, guys? Come on over here. Let's try to steal this car because it's easier. And it's the same approach in fraud prevention. You just want to make it a little more difficult. They're not going to go away, but my research shows send them elsewhere. So that 2-pronged approach, the human approach and the technology approach. So using, training your employees, all the way to the tech approaches, right? Utilizing software, internal, external, iPads, iPhones, password protection, multi-factor authentication, credit cards, all those things really, really help send them elsewhere. Send the auto theft, let them find another car without a club, basically.
Would you be on TikTok?
Okay, so fun fact, I do have a couple cameos on TikTok. Okay, I don't know if they can be found. I might have taken them down, but during the pandemic, my daughters were home, right? And TikTok was huge here. It still is big, but it was just blowing up then. Everyone was looking for extra things to do. So my daughters asked me to be on. So I have 2 cameos on TikToks, which I think did pretty well. Okay, I'm not going to claim that they did well because I was in them because my daughters have the skills, dance skills. But nonetheless, I did go on. But here's what's interesting about TikTok. We have done many studies. And platforms like TikTok and even like YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, all of those, we need, as media, entertainment professionals, and even small businesses, we need to be on these, right? We need to get our brands out, get our marketing material out. But what's dangerous, Barbara, is what's in the background. So we've done studies on this and what we can actually find in people's backgrounds. I did one with a small business where they challenged me, and within about 2 weeks, I had enough information to be dangerous, all based on what I found on their social media sites, including they had dabbled in TikTok a little bit. So, I mean, this is real time intelligence that scammers can get. Absolutely.
Well, let's get a little bit more specific. So, what you're talking about is the family does the really cute choreographed dance video. And by the way, I'm only picking on TikTok because it's a Chinese platform. And there's all this data, which you can quote better than I, about anticipate that 86% of us have all our personal information sitting somewhere in China.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, cause like, okay. So what happens in my cute family choreographed dance video is I left a computer monitor open. I left something on a Post-it on my refrigerator. I might have a bill hanging out somewhere. It's funny too, Michael, because I teach people to care about the optics and what's in the shot. But I'm always talking about like, I don't want to see your dirty laundry. I don't want to see like leftover food or the inside of your bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And I was flabbergasted when you told me this.
Mm-hmm.
That even like degrees on a wall or other personal information about relatives, because sometimes those are used as security check questions.
Yes, this is it, Barbara. It is so disturbing. And the reason why TikTok, I think there's two reasons that really drive the scammers to TikTok. And the thing is, looking behind the scenes, Barbara, they have algorithms. All right. They don't, they don't sit there and manually check these. They have algorithms that actually scan the images, and they'll find these things and then send them to, they're run like corporations. They send them to someone that looks and says, wow, look at what we can do with this one. And they'll rate the TikTok as far as the scam. Yeah, hey, we can use this because it has this and this. So, but with the TikToks, there's two things. One is that it's not really a stable background. Usually you see, the camera's moving around a little bit. It's kind of, scanning different parts of the room. And that, again, that's just you're making yourself more vulnerable because you can look in those backgrounds. Secondly, a lot of it is driven by the younger population. Now, their degree of privacy is different than ours, because they were brought up on technology. They were brought up on putting things out there in the world. So they don't have, our studies show that they don't have that same sense of privacy and security that normally maybe the older generation would. So the fact that, something's in their background doesn't matter as much to them as it would, let's say, to us. But college degrees, perfect example, right? We see these all over Zoom even. I mean, think about it. I know immediately your full name. I can probably estimate, based on the year you graduated, if it's a master's, okay, or a bachelor's or an associate's or PhD, whatever it is, school you went to. These things are going to be really key on helping me find, it's a puzzle. So that's going to give me 3 or 4 pieces of a puzzle. I maybe need 20 to get an auto loan in your name. So, it's just all, pieces of information that they're putting together on you.
What is the psychology of fraud? Because that's the name of your book.
So the psychology of fraud, it's something, Barbara, that, after 25 years, I've realized, when I started in academics about 5 years ago, I realized that there's not much material on scammers and the mindset of these fraudsters. And that's really what I embarked on, a journey of, hey, what is it all about? What makes them tick? Why do they focus on certain people and not on other people? And that's really the whole concept of the psychology of fraud is, and it's focused on the mindset of the fraudster. But secondly, the book really focuses on more prevention, like how can you not be a victim? How can a small business, how can a consumer or solopreneur not be a victim and make themselves the subject of the fraudsters and the scammers? Make it more difficult. What can they do? What's in their mindset? And that's what's interesting because, fun fact, they are absolutely more cognitive than other types of criminals. So you have to have your guard up. You have to, send them elsewhere. They can make those rational decisions, between right and wrong. So therefore, the fact that if you do, put that club out, they can sit there and make a rational decision and say, wow, that's way too much effort for this car, and they can move, they can go somewhere else. So that's really the whole concept behind it.
I love that you're the mind hunter of fraud. What would be the digital, virtual, online version of the club?
So the technical version would be, basically looking at technology and seeing how it can support you. Okay, so we cannot be on 100% of the time. You can't be looking for fraud and scams 10 hours a day or 12, however many hours that you work. You just can't. That's why technology is key. So what I recommend always, look at those technology platforms. I mean, some of the ones I use, like on my computer, are endpoint security. That's a great one that I use because what it will do is it'll actually grab. When I talk about imposter scams, it'll actually notify me. It'll stop those. It's like a spam alert and say, "Hey, this doesn't make sense based on your algorithms. Why is this? Would you be emailing someone at 12 p.m. On a Friday night? Maybe, I don't know, but it's not within the algorithm. So something like that on my laptop works very well. Another thing I recommend is technology in the phones, in the iPad. So adjust your settings. I mean, once a week, I go in there, I spend maybe
Mm.
5 minutes. Barbara, adjust your settings because this is the thing. Those social media platforms, they share information with one another. Like Instagram, they're connected. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. They default to open settings. So, I mean, what's so important, you have to go in and make sure you're restricting what information is being exchanged between those sites. And a lot of people don't realize it defaults to that openness. And you have all you have to do is put restrictions. It doesn't mean you're getting less traffic. It doesn't mean you get less likes. It's just a matter of where your information is going outside of that platform.
That's such a great reminder because they also change. You've set them and then you go back and realize, hey, this was set to private. How could it become unprivate? I don't know how that happens exactly, but I've noticed that does happen. So it's a great reminder to, you do it weekly? I was going to say it like every 6 months, but oops,
It's
oops,
Barbara, like I
yikes.
said, I can't be defrauded. I tell this to my family. I'm like, you guys cannot get defrauded because if Dr. Fraud's family gets defrauded, it's not going to look good.
That's a bad look. That's true. That's a bad look for Dr. Fraud. So, but
Correct.
okay, I'm putting it on my calendar. It's going to be part of
I'm
my
going to check,
weekly
Barbara. I'm going to check.
inventory. Wow. That'd be great though if you can, let us know other products that you recommend. Are there, by the way, just in terms of travel and feeling
Mm.
secure about that, because now that the world is opening up again, are there travel products that you recommend?
Barbara, I'm so glad you brought that up because traveling, prior to the pandemic, I was road warrior, international 85% of the time. Love, love, love to travel. But there are incredible security risks that come with that. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why, I designed a whole course based on that. Because it's funny because what I
Hmm.
started to do was just copy down little things, snippets. I was here, I was there, and I would just follow them myself and maybe send them to my family. But I realized, you know what? People were asking me. So I developed a whole course on it just on travel safety. And it focuses on a lot of different things. And yes, we are so vulnerable when we travel on every single level. I mean, for example, products, some of the things that I always swear by is RFID wallets. Okay, so wallets, bags, and what it is, it's a protection device. It kind of creates a metal shield around your credit cards and your personal information. We've done studies on these; they're very hard to penetrate. Very cheap. You can get them on Amazon. I use a couple different brands. Like Samsonite even has some nice ones, and they're relatively low cost. So that's the technology end of it. But secondly, like personal protection devices, a lot of times you can just you can get on airplanes with these, but they will absolutely make you safe. I mean, I've used them. I was actually chased in Peru by a dog going down the street once, and I threw this alarm out, and it was just loud enough to send the dog somewhere else. So I mean, these can be used from high end frauds to the aggressive dog in Peru. I mean, wherever you might be. Things like fake Wi-Fi. This is huge right now, and people really need to key in on that because we need to be connected, right? And there are so many fake
Okay,
Wi-Fi.
I'm paranoid. Yeah, I won't do it. That's one of those weird things that I am. Well, I talk to you, so I'm paranoid enough to be like, oh, well, you know what? Backing up, I got scammed in an airport years ago, back in the day, pre cell phones, when we had phone numbers so that we could make long distance calls and international calls from a payphone. And I got scammed in an airport because I guess they would stand around with mirrors and see how you punched in the number. And so mine got stolen, and then bunch of calls to like Asia and the Middle East. It was caught really quickly, et cetera, et cetera. So that was, gosh, 20 years ago or something. That's when I realized, oh, airports are
Mhm.
hotbeds of nefarious characters.
What was the outcome of that? Was it a good outcome, hopefully?
It was for me because it was
Okay.
actually a corporate related. So I reported it to HR. I was not held accountable. And I think whichever major phone carrier that was, I mean, was there more than one then? Maybe it was AT&T. I can't remember, but no one was held accountable. It was figured out pretty quickly that it had been stolen.
That's definitely old school. We've seen that, but it's Barbara. But you know what? It's the same, technique. It's just a new method now, and it's very common because, think about if someone's holding up their phone, right? You really don't think twice, if they're just maybe it looks like they're taking a selfie or something, where it could be on reverse, and they're actually, as you mentioned, like your passwords. It is so easy to actually determine just by the way you're swiping or you put your number in. It's very easy to do. So those simple things they're still being used now. But what the scammers will do is they'll utilize multiple tricks to, like we talked about the way fake Wi-Fi. I mean, this is especially in airports. I mean, I can't tell you how many people get scammed in airports because these sites. I mean, we've done the research on this. They look exactly like legitimate. I mean, they'll pop up if you're in Denver International Airport, and it'll show the Denver airport in pictures. It looks fantastic. Hey, put your password in, free Wi-Fi, 24 hours, game over, right? It's an imposter site. But one of the keys to prevention there is to look at HTTPS. That's the key, the S. So if a site has an S in it, it means it's more secure than HTTP. So that usually means it's not a fake Wi-Fi site if you're doing some activity in there. So just a key to prevention right off the bat. Look for that little S at the end.
That's worth the price of admission. Thank you. Is it also helpful then to do your research before you go and to know what the actual legit Wi-Fi should be in that airport?
Correct. What I do is so I have AT&T. I contact my provider. I usually get, and you can get like a VPN or a preferred secure network right through the provider. It's very, very reasonably cost. I mean, compared to what a identity theft could cost you. And this is what's, disturbing because, we see with such an increase in technology and with threats and with, the fact that most businesses, small businesses that are breached, go bankrupt within 5 years because of all those breaches. I mean, it does behoove, someone to put that little extra effort in, to just, look at those extra precautions. And right, getting something through a provider helps. And a VPN, potentially exploring a VPN. So that will of course filter it right through an external site first. It's going to go all through the filtering mechanisms before it even, gets to you. So it's pretty much, it's not foolproof, of course, but it's going to cut down probably 90% of the fraud that you could be susceptible to.
Will you use your Wi-Fi once you're in the air, or are we still at risk?
Yeah, oh boy, that's a great question. I mean, right, that's the optimal time to get some work done, right? You got a couple hours to go, kids kicking your seat behind you. You need to like kind of zone out somehow. So exactly, and this is what we want to do. We want to get some work done. What I usually do is before I get on a flight, unless it's like a really long haul flight, I will. It's just, and again, this is where human management, Barbara, comes into play. What I do is I load up. I call it before I go. So I'll know. Let's say I need to get some content out. I need to make a post on LinkedIn. I need to write an article. What I'll do is I'll just get everything loaded up, cut and paste it in a Word doc. So I'm just operating on Word when I'm there. I'm doing my content in Word. And the second I touch down, I post it. All right. So I think if you just manage it from a human level, you really realize, do I really need to be on email right now? Do I really need to be engaged on social media? And again, much like many of your listeners out there, we're all about efficiency, right? 2 hours on a plane, think of all that you could get done. But I don't know. I think it's a lot of it has to do with the human element. And again, just, reducing the number of opportunities because I don't know. I mean, that Wi-Fi, I don't know where it's going. You're 30,000 feet in the air. I mean, could be going, I mean, you could be transmitting, constantly as you're going. So this is a risk I personally try not to take unless, again, it's a really long haul flight and you just need to get some work done.
I can't let you go without asking, what are some of your favorite all-time scams? Because you're like a scam historian.
I, Barbara, I love the history of scams. I tell you, it's so cool, right? And this is one of the things that we do on the DFTV platform is we just pick a scam and just pick it apart. One of my favorites. All right, I know you're from New York. We're both New Yorkers, so George Parker, 1883, right? After the Brooklyn Bridge was built, okay, he was scammer of all scammers. You can Google him. Interesting character, and he really was a con artist, okay? And this is where kind of like the term con artist went to scammer, and this is where I find it really fascinating because con artist kind of has a not as much of a negative connotation. It's kind of like, wow, he's creative. He's like a magician. So what George Parker would do, he actually sold the Brooklyn Bridge I think close to a dozen times right after it went public, right? He never owned it. Yeah, he never had any paperwork. He sold it upwards of a dozen. I think one time it was on record he sold it for $50,000 at the time, 1883. I mean, I don't know what the equivalent is now, right, Barbara? I mean, that's a, it's astronomical. He sold the Statue of Liberty. He sold a lot of monuments, right? But what's interesting to me about this scam is that when you really pick it apart, it's this. If you were to ask me, okay, what's your favorite scam that happened, last week? It's the same DNA. He used those same tricks, sense of urgency, social pressure, power of persuasion. I mean, he unfortunately really, duped those people to come in just like we do. And he used those same techniques, but back then it wasn't really formalized. Nobody studied it. Nobody knew what he was doing. But then other con artists would replicate it. That's one of my favorites. I have to do. I mean, obviously, the media space that you're in. Do you remember the Fry Festival, April 2017? Do you remember this? Billy McFarland. He bought a Caribbean island.
Obsessed.
Okay, so
okay, Michael, we could talk for hours. I watched both dueling documentaries.
Okay,
have incredible opinions about both. This is an amazing, amazing story.
Amazing. I mean, right. We could do a whole other podcast on it because I find it so. I did an episode as well. I ended up I was in this a weekend of research because there's so many things to talk about with it. Billy McFarland, did he really intend this? Did he not? People were, weren't really. I don't want to say scammed, if you will, but they elected to go to this island. There was this social media aspect of it where. I think Kim Kardashian, right? Didn't he engage her to? I think he paid her $200,000 to promote it.
It was Kendall or Kylie. It was Kendall or Kylie before. It was one of the young, right? Kendall or Kylie Jenner. But before we just back up for 1 sec. So anyone listening who doesn't know what this is and hasn't obsessively watched both the dueling documentaries on the topic should know this happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Was supposed to be a super exclusive luxury getaway festival on a Caribbean island where you could go be fabulous with your fabulous card, whatever that specialty access card he was. And so he got a lot of people on board with him, but is it Bobby McFarland?
Billy McFarland. Yeah.
Right. He was the mastermind. And what are your opinions about this? Oh, by the way, for everyone to know, the kicker is that the island was a dump. There were people that live in tents. They famously had to eat cheese sandwiches, which right. If you go to Instagram, that's worth the price of admission right there. And they're on buses and it just seems so miserable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Barbara, the thing with Billy is I kind of looked into his background, from a psychological perspective, and what you see. So he was very unique in the sense that you saw signs in Billy that you do in some of the, I want to say, bigger scams, like Abigail, like Holmes, even Madoff, because he had that charismatic ability about him. Which, right, we kind of don't understand. We're objective and we're looking back at this saying, well, how could you be duped into this? But he had that, he just literally would suck people into this, as he termed it, a transformation. And he was so good at it. And he conned millions. I think it was 17 million maybe was the final count of sponsors. Barbara, there was nothing there, as you mentioned. I mean, and celebrities were supporting him. I mean, there were some rappers that were on yachts, and I mean, and really, you think about, how did he do this? Were people really in need of that transformation that signed up? I would think no, because I looked at some of their backgrounds. So really, it was just his charisma, his ability to really, bring those people in. And those people are really, really dangerous, because they just have that magic, you call it, which is the con artist of, it's like the George Parker of 1883. He's the new version of George Parker.
You mentioned earlier an online class you have for travel security. And can you talk about your classes and how I can find them and how I can use them?
Absolutely, Barbara. And I think this is one of the things where I feel that I love to support those small businesses, the solo entrepreneurs. And this is where I kind of, developed the Dr. Fraud Training Group platform, because all this content, is in my mind. And it's like, I want to just help people be safe. And I love when I get emails back saying, hey, look what I found in my email today, and it's a scam. Hey, I almost engaged in this, but I didn't. Or, getting a call from a small business saying, wow, I think I got scammed, $1.5 million. I had an employee do something. I mean, this is what just keeps me up at night. So I think, that's where the Dr. Fraud Training Group platform came about. So what I did was, I kind of just slowly, as I went through my past 2 years, like every day I would think, okay, what can I help people with today? So I focused on different segments. Travel fraud is one, phishing scams is another, psychology of fraud. So it focuses on the human-based and also the technology-based. So it really does get in the weeds on some of it, but others is just the human-based things that really can help lower people's threat level. Don't waste calories on this. The content's there. Just get the education. Worry about the fun stuff, business development and growing your business. I mean, that's what, all of us out there should be doing, and also from a customer perspective, we don't want our customers to feel like they're at risk doing business with us. So the fact that, hey, if we are a little educated, if we have enough to make ourselves dangerous, put that club out on your car, send them somewhere else. This is what's important. So that's kind of where, I wanted to give back to all of the businesses out there with things that I know, but I can't, I don't have enough platforms to just keep talking about them, in media or whatever else I'm doing. It's, I want to get something robust, for the consumers out there. So they can find that through Dr. Fraud Training Group, which is www.drfraud.org. And right to my website, the platform is there, and that'll get them right to the training group.
And it's fully online? Go at your own pace, or is it a drip, or is it, once I buy, I'm in and get to take the class?
Yep. And so, Barbara, it's designed really for the professional, that just, can't be in front of a computer for an hour at a clip. I mean, it's 100% online, self-paced. You sign up for the course and you take it as you take it. You could be on a subway, grab a couple minutes. You could be in an Uber, running to boarding a plane. I mean, whatever you're doing. So you can take it, at your pace, and it will pick up, right where you left off. So it's self-paced, fully online. It's made for the busy people, which is all of us in the world. So it can be taken, at any point in time in a busy schedule.
I can't thank you enough. I feel much safer and therefore much more secure since we spoke today. Thank you so much for joining me and Michael for this episode of Camera Ready and Able. If you're interested in learning how to become more secure on camera, hop on over to my website, abelintermedia.com, and download your own free copy of 12 Tips for Success on Camera. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you always know when new episodes are available.